stellar cast and being filmed in Technicolor, Tycoon, as the New York Times put it, misses the mark by a good country mile. To be stated simply, the picture has been viewed as overlong and boring. Wayne plays a construction engineer hired to build a railroad in the Andes Mountains of South America. Sir Cedric Hardwicke is Wayne's boss, with mining interests in the area. Wayne and Hardwicke don't hit it off too well, and their relationship is further strained when Wayne makes a play for Hardwicke's daughter, Laraine Day. They fall in love and marry despite Hardwicke's objections. Wayne and Hardwicke also continue fighting about the construction plans and all, which lead Wayne to take chances that put his men in danger. Also in the cast are Dame Judith Anderson as Day's chaperone and Anthony Quinn as Day's cousin. A lot of good talent gone to waste. RKO spent over $3 million on this film, a substantial amount at the time, and only made about $2 million of it back. At its conclusion, I plan to speak by phone with its leading lady, Laraine Day. And now let's bring up the curtain on Tycoon. We've just seen Tycoon from 1947, and waiting out in her home in California to speak with us is the leading lady of this film, Laraine Day. Miss Day, how are you?
Fine. How are you, Ray?
Good. You know, and I was just thinking before we started here, I've been interviewing you like this off and on for maybe a decade.
It feels like it.
Because, you know, I was trying to think of the first one. It might have been one of those Dr. Kildare films.
I thought it was Dr. Wassel.
Well, that was certainly an early one, but we talked about the Dr. Kildare films. We talked about I Married a Communist, which was later known as Woman on Pier 13. We talked about Mr. Lucky. So anyway, we've been doing this a lot, and
yes, we have.
and always glad to do it. Hope you feel the same way.
Yes, it's always a pleasure.
And the movie we've just seen, Tycoon from 1947, generally, you know, not seen as a successful film. It cost a lot of money to make, over $3 million, which I think was more than RKO had ever spent on a movie up to that point. Only made about $1 million or $2 million of it back. And,
I wonder why.
Well, I guess people didn't go to see it in large numbers, but...
But, I mean, it was a John Wayne picture, and he was such a big star at that time.
Well, he was, but I guess it wasn't the kind of role that people expected to see him in. I mean, I don't know. He certainly was, you know, his character wasn't too much different than previous characters that he'd played. It was a beautifully photographed color film set in the Andes, you know, exotic locale and all, but who knows why people go to movies anymore, or then, you know, I mean, what...
Or now.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, well, let me ask you this. I mean, when you start a film, and you're going through it, I mean, how often do you have a sense of, well, this is going to work, this is going to be good, and then turn out to be disappointed, or vice versa? I mean...
Well, it has happened to me once, where I had a feeling that it was going to be a wonderful film, and it turned out to be just a bomb.
Which one?
I mean, there have been other bombs, but this was one where I felt, you know, reading the script, that it was going to be a sensational picture.
You're talking about Tycoon now?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
This was another one called Without Honor. And it was a bomb. And I think largely due to the cast,
well,
which
certainly
included me.
You can't argue with the cast in Tycoon, my
no,
gosh.
No, you can't.
I mean, not only Wayne and yourself, but Sir Cedric Hardwicke, Dame Judith Anderson, Anthony Quinn. Come on, you know, I mean, really.
Oh, well, this came as such a big surprise to me when you told me this just now.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know how much the picture cost, or how much it had made, or...
Well, of course, I'm only going by what I've read, but I assume it's accurate. It cost, as I said, something over $3 million and made back maybe $2 million of it, so it lost $1 million, which was, I'm sure, a disappointment for the studio. But who's to say, you know, why it didn't go over?
Well, I'm surprised. They usually have such authorities who have reasons for everything.
Well, the length might have had something to do with it. You know, sometimes people have a hard time, even now, you know, sitting through something that goes over 2 hours. There have been numbers of films like that in recent years that have been cut down, you know, because they were thought to be too long, and maybe the length had something to do with it. In any case, you were surrounded with some awfully good people on this picture, and I wondered, of course, I don't think she was Dame Judith Anderson at that point. She became Dame Judith Anderson. He was, I think, Sir Cedric Hardwicke at that time.
Yes, he was.
So you have all this, you know, knighted British royalty along with you, and Wayne, and I mean, you must have felt pretty good about being on this picture.
Yes, I did. But I mean, I don't think American audiences are terribly impressed with titles. I mean, they love Princess Di, and they like to read about Prince Charles, but beyond that, do you really think American audiences care about British titled people?
Oh, probably not. Probably not. Although they might have been impressed by Olivier, you know. I mean, he was Sir Lawrence and then Lord Lawrence. I mean, I think he probably stands out amongst all the other English actors who've been knighted. But
well, but he was always a leading man.
Yes,
and they're the ones that people go see. They don't go see the supporting cast.
Yeah, I don't suppose did you call Mr. Hardwicke Sir Cedric or what?
No. I don't know what I called him. Probably Cedric. We always called everyone by first names.
Yes. Do you remember if this film, where this film was shot? I mean, I know it was supposed to be set in the Andes, but I presume it wasn't actually done there. Do you recall where you did do the film?
I think it was Lone Pine, you know, out here in California.
That's a beautiful location. I've never been there, but I've heard so much about it. You ought to go up there sometime, and I'll tell you why. There's a festival they put on up there in Lone Pine every year. I think it's in late September, maybe early October. And they bring people there who've worked in films that were made at Lone Pine. They've had...
Boy, they'd have to have an awful lot of them.
Yeah, well, they had Doug Fairbanks there. You know, Gunga Din was done there. And they bring all these people up there who worked in the films at Lone Pine, and they take you out to these locations that are still there, and the man who puts it on knows every rock, every tree. You know, this is where Gene Autry rode, or Tim Holt, or whomever was out there. And they can take you to these locations, and they look exactly as they looked 40, 50 years ago. And it's just a beautiful place, and still a good location for filming.
Oh, yes. They're still clouding the atmosphere up there.
And they have this little town of Lone Pine there. It's not very big, and not too many accommodations, but it's an interesting place. You ought to go back sometime.
Oh, I never go back.
Oh, you don't?
I'm one of those people who just don't go back to see things again.
You don't, huh? Like, you don't go back to Utah?
Nope.
Haven't been back since when?
Oh, I think the last time I went back, I was about 18.
Oh, my gosh.
So that's a long time ago.
I remember the last time I spoke to you, we weren't talking about a John Wayne movie at the time, but somehow we got off onto it. And I remember you telling me this story about how you hid something from Mr. Wayne. His keys, I believe. And maybe people didn't hear that story the last time we talked.
No, we didn't hide any keys from him. We got a lot of keys from the hardware store, and we put a little tags on them that said, property of John Wayne, please return, reward. And then we dropped them all around the studio.
Oh, my gosh.
So that he had people showing up all day to return keys that they thought belonged to him. And he never knew who did it. Which one of the crew or whoever, he didn't know, but it was a funny gag.
But you were in on it.
Oh, yes.
And was he good about that sort of thing? I mean, did he mind having tricks played on him?
No, he was fine about it.
Richard Wallace was the man who directed this film.
Yes.
I don't know that much about him, although I think he started, you know, in the 20s or early 30s.
He was a comedy writer first, and then he did a lot of comedy pictures, and he directed another picture I made, Bride by Mistake, which was the first thing I did for RKO after I did the Westerns.
Yeah, because you did some Westerns under another name, Laraine
Johnson.
With a man, I remember you made one with a man I had the privilege of meeting once, George O'Brien.
I did all 4 of them with George.
You know, his son, Darcy, is a novelist and English teacher. He teaches at the University of Tulsa, still there. That's where George died. You know, they brought him back to a, you know, sort of a nursing place there, and George's wife, who never, I don't think he ever got divorced from Marguerite Churchill, and now she's there. She's still living up in her, must be 90 by now, but she's living there near Tulsa too, near her son.
Well, he was one of the nicest men I've ever worked with, George O'Brien.
He certainly was a nice man when I met him, and he was about 80, 81 at the time. Still looked very vigorous, you know, barrel-chested, and he was...
a wonderful smile. He always had a great smile on.
Yes, ma'am. And you worked with Wayne again, of course. I'm thinking at least one other time, maybe more, in High and the Mighty.
Yes, and it's going to be released to a video now.
Finally. Yes. That film has been, there were a long time, there were like 4 John Wayne films you could not get anywhere. And High and the Mighty was one, Hondo and McClintock were the others, and then there was a 4th one that's still not out called Island in the Sky. But they are finally coming out with High and the Mighty. Well, that's great.
Oh, that's what I read in the paper.
I, of course, never forget that whistling, you know, constantly through it.
Yes, that won an Academy Award.
The tune did?
Uh-huh.
Well, I'll look forward to seeing that on video. I've got a note. Matter of fact, I think I might have sent you a copy of a copy a few years ago, but you'll be able to get a better one now.
No, I don't have a copy of the High and the Mighty.
Did I not send you that?
No.
Well, maybe. Well, listen, if it doesn't come out like you think it's going to, let me know. And I've got a copy, but it's not the greatest in the world.
All right.
And I'll send you that. But but wait to see if the good one comes out first.
Yes, I will, because they'll have a nice print. They should have.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I thank you again for your time. It's always a joy to talk with you.
Well, thank you.
And hope we can do it again.
Okay.
Take care, ma'am.
Good luck.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was Laraine Day. Hope you enjoyed hearing from her. Now, next week we won't be on. We have a special fundraiser, I think, with the 3 tenors from New York City. But we'll be back in early November. So until then, thank you and good night.
Local broadcast of the Good Times Picture Show is made possible in part by the Arkansas Radio Network, where you'll hear news updates every hour on over 60 powerhouse FM and AM stations, by the Mountain Valley Water Company of Little Rock, supplier of America's premium water, by the Jonesboro Sun, Northeast Arkansas's morning newspaper, and by viewers like you.
Get noticed with the Good Times Picture Show T-shirt, available for only $14.95. Call 1-800-662-2386 and order yours today.
On November 15th through the 18th, AETN will present 30 movies for 30 years. A weekend full of classic movies celebrating our 30th anniversary on the air. For a list of movies, along with brief descriptions, call AETN Viewer Services at 1-501-682-4198.
They've been smashing the Jewish stores all week.
My wife is very upset about that.
I can't. She can't move.
No physical reason for her inability to walk.
Is she crazy?
The Germans are starting to pick up Jews right off the street.
I'm telling you, this won't last.
What do they do with them?
You're not blaming this on me, are you?
You hate yourself. That's what's scaring her to death.
Arthur Miller's Broken Glass on Mobile Masterpiece Theater.
Sunday night at 8.
Our first intention was to restore the locomotive to its original state of beauty, which meant that a steam engine would be one that huffed and puffed. It made steam and had smoke, and you could hear the whistle blow and the bell ring. The Cotton Belt Railroad has been involved in this part of the state and this part of the country for years, and it should be moved around up on the Cotton Belt tracks as you refer to, a moving museum or a living museum, to actually see, let the people see what the Cotton Belt has done and is meant to this part of the country. And it's one of 10 locomotives that were built in the state. And as far as I can been able to determine or ascertain, it's the only railroad in the state that built their locomotives in their home shops. And back in 1942, it was provided jobs for a lot of people in Pine Bluff. Well, when the Cotton Belt built them in 1942, they couldn't buy any motive power, and to ascertain or to keep the war effort going, the Office of War Service Material allowed them the privilege of building 10 locomotives. And they were used in passenger and freight service on main-line Cotton Belt tracks from East St. Louis, Illinois to Tyler, Texas.
This is the last locomotive of its class in the world. It and on the Cotton Belt, and it was given to the city of Pine Bluff in 1955, and it set out at Oakland Park and was vandalized, and the elements got to it, the weather, and so we just couldn't stand it any longer, so we had to try to get it back in and restore it. So this is our present position on it now. As you can see, it's beginning to look like a locomotive again.
Well, it's just you might call it a labor of love. That's what we had when we put it in the house and started rebuilding it. And the biggest thrill, I guess, that all of us had was the day that we drove it out onto the transfer table and brought it back to the end of this track, and we brought it out here, and we had the tender behind us here, sitting here, and we coupled it up, and then we ran it up and down the track like we have here today. And to see it operate again, it just, well, it brings tears. It did to me. It brought tears to my eyes, because it's been a long, hard job, and we saw that our efforts had paid off, and we were just awful thrilled that the engine was running again.
To the old-timers, it would be a dream of reality to see something that they worked and nurtured and cherished and put a lot of love and care in building, see it be restored and preserved to where it didn't fade from the face of the earth. For the younger generation of people who've never seen a steam engine or don't know anything about it, it would be a marvelous way for them to relate to the yesteryear of our historical heritage. The building that it sits in is where it was built, and our Historical Society would like very much to either secure a long-term lease or secure the right to use this building, to have the equipment parked to where the public could come and see it, and where it would be on display. And as far as the public coming right now, well, I mean, the railroad allows anybody to come in where we are working on it to take pictures anytime they want to.
You're watching AETN, celebrating 30 years of award-winning local programming.